Jeffro from Two Hacks Garage. Well, I'm reaching out to you guys because I need some help. What do I need help with? I need help with identifying an intake manifold. I'm currently working on a couple projects. One is a 311 cubic inch small block Chevy based upon the 302 small block Chevy. And the other one is a 292 cubic inch small block Chevy based off the 283. I'm calling that the DZ292. Why am I doing that? Well, I'm taking a 283, and what I've been doing, you know what, guys, behind the scenes, I read a lot, and I read a lot of car stuff. And one of my favorite engines of all time is the 1967 DZ302, the 302 small block that came out in the Trans Am series. 68 and 69 were a little bit different, but 1967, it was a 327 block, a steel 283 crank, and all that fun jazz. They did have a specialty piston because of the compression height. I want to say it was like 1.805. Anyway, that's more of that engine nerdy math. Let's not get into right now. So what I'm doing is I'm taking stuff from 1967 DZ302 program, and I'm using a 283 and kind of blending the two together. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to use very similar cylinder heads that was used on the 67 engine for the 292. I've got a new old stock Duntov 3030 cam that was used in the 302. And I've also got a set of the correct lifters, new old stock, that are going into it. I'm using Keith Black pistons that are about almost the exact same design as the TRW ones they put in the factory. The pink rods, I'm not going to use those. I did find some, but I want to go with the floater style. So I'm using an Eagle SIR. It's stronger. It's about the same weight, but you know what? It's a little bit more modern technology. It's going to hold up. I also do have the correct crankshaft casting on that. It's a forged unit. The only difference between the regular 283 steel crank and the DZ302 steel crank, even though they share the same numbers, is the 302 crank would have been nitrided, and the rear hub on it where your flex plate bolts on was actually flanged. So I'm rambling a lot. I need your help. The original DZ302 intake manifold was a dual plane high-rise design, winter snowflake design if you want to call it, and it utilized a 780 CFM carburetor. Well, those intake manifolds are a little bit hard to find, and when you do find them, they're kind of expensive. And what I decided to do was go aftermarket with it. The reason I did that was it's not the fact that I don't want the original. I want a design that was aftermarket. Now, you got to mind you, they're all aluminum, that mimicked that DZ302 dual plane high-rise intake design, but had a little bit more, I guess you say, improvements it made to it. So over the summer, I found a Holley intake manifold where I'm kind of finding out might be rare. It's the only one I've seen. But it also seems like there's a whole lot of other part numbers that kind of correlate to it that might be the same thing, just different iterations. I am not 100% sure, but I really need your guys' help identifying this intake manifold because I can't find a lot of information on it online, and I really want to get the specs on it and just see what I'm working with. So with that, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the intake manifold. I'm going to talk about the other intake manifolds that are somewhat similar that are offered. And then I'm going to show you the fuel delivery that's going into this that's just a little bit different than the 67 302 design. But that being said, it's going to probably work a little bit better with my application. With that, I know I'm rambling. It's a lot of whole weird engine history, what I'm doing of taking this little engine to make this little bit bigger engine that's still smaller than a little engine that Chevy made. But it revved to the moon, made awesome power, and they were famous for that. I'm rambling. Let's go check this out. Okay, so here is the intake that I bought that literally, I think this is the only one I've seen. It is a Holley Dominator 2. Now, from what I've seen online, there was different iterations of this that was called the Holley Street Contender, and there was also a Holley Street Dominator, but they look something a little bit different. Now, this is the take on the DZ302. They're both high-rise dual-plane intake manifolds. I know that sounds goofy, but it actually worked really well. You're kind of wondering why I probably can't find a lot of information on this. Well, it's simple. So the Holley Street Contender part number was a 701R-36, and the Holley Street Dominator was 300-36. And everything is cast in the intake manifold when it comes to part numbers underneath. Problem is, if you look here, both those numbers are cast in there. There is no unique part number on there. It's got the part number for the Contender and the Street Dominator. But that being said, this is called the Dominator 2. So that's what I need help with, guys. I need help with finding out what specs are on this. I want to know for sure, because when I started looking things up, one thing I did find out that the Holley Street Dominator, which is the 300-36, all I read on forums, you name it, said it's good intake, dual plane high rise. I have two different numbers on where it makes its power. One said idle to 7,200 and one said 15 to 6,500. That one's also a 9EGR, and they say it was the copy of the 302 and it's square flanged. Now, what I find on the Holley Street Contender, it's just the earlier version of the 300-36, and visually it pretty much looks the same, just very minor things difference. How does that play into the 1967 intake manifold? Well, the original 1967 intake manifold was a dual plane high rise, and it was part number 3917610, and it had the winner's snowflake that was on it. Really awesome design. Talk about horsepower? Well, let's talk about that a little bit. 1967 302. On paper, it made 290 horsepower at 5,800 RPMs, 290 pound-feet of torque at 4,200 RPMs. Rumor has it, though, here's where it gets important, is that it made 350 horsepower at 7,000 RPMs. Hence, everything I'm finding on these intakes making power off idle to 7,200. Makes sense, but I'm going to find out, because my plan is pretty simple, guys. I'm going to build the 292 DZ based off the DZ302 as close as I can, a little bit more performance modifications, see what kind of horsepower I get. Got to mind you, the 1967 302 was, a pretty good engine, and it had a 4-inch bore, 3-inch stroke. The bore I'm going with is 3.975, 3.935, sorry about that, 60 over 283 with 3-inch stroke. A lot of the same parts, name it. I just want to find out, can you take the 283, throw in some of the 302 goodies, get it as close as you can, and make more horsepower? I'm going to find out. That's why I'm calling it the DZ292. Now, let's talk about fuel. Well, guess what, guys? The original carburetor on a 67 302. Now, mind you, I am talking 67 because in 68 and 69, they used a different block. It was a large journal block, and so the crank was a little bit different. I believe the intake was the same. It might have been a little bit different, but the carb was different. I'm focused on 1967. So in 1967, they did use a Holley carb, and it was it was 3910. The GM part number was 3916143. It was also used on the L78 396, which was a hot engine. It was a 780 CFM vacuum secondary. I'm using, it's a Holley Classic carburetor. This is brand new. You got to use a Holley on a Holley. I mean, come on. And the thing about it is, this one here is a 600 CFM double pumper. I like the double pumpers. I've gotten used to getting them setting up and all that over the vacuum secondaries. This is the mechanical choke. I do like that. Kind of neat carburetor. The reason I'm going with a little bit different on the CFM is because this is a little bit smaller cubic inches, bore smaller, and I also got to factor in the cylinder heads too and all that fun jazz. I think, my opinion, this is going to work better than the 780. My opinion, just by looking at everything, 780 might have been just a little bit too much carb for that 302, and I can pretty much guess that it would be a little bit too much carb for the 292. So that's why I'm going with this one. It has pretty much the same look, intake. Classic Holley design, This looks very similar to the factory Winters DZ302 intake, and this looks really similar to the factory 780 DZ302 carburetor, which was a Holley. So yeah, we're going to see what that does. And to top it off, guys, you know what? You got to go with the chrome air cleaner. This is just a, Holley classic 10-inch paper element. Kind of makes it kind of nice, So yeah, little bit of history behind all that, kind of behind the scenes of what I going on, but I really need to your help figuring out what this intake manifold specs are, and that way I know 100% for sure. I like to know everything on these, and I just really need some help, guys. So what I'm going to do in the description is I'm going to put the, at the end of this will be pictures, but I'll put the part numbers that are on here. And if anybody can help me find out all the information on this intake manifold, that would be absolutely greatly appreciated, because I need more knowledge on this. And like I always say, knowledge is power. So yeah, guys, please, please, please give me help finding out what I got here. I read a lot of forums, a lot of great information, but I just want to verify that. The one thing I did find out, that these also were idle to 7,200 RPMs. You know what, guys? I plan on, when this DZ292 is done, spinning it up well over 7,000 RPMs. So with that, if you guys could help me figure out what I got going here with this intake manifold, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I'll give you guys a little bit closer look here. All right, so let's just give it one more look. Dominator 2. Dual plane high rise. It's pretty neat. I do like it. It does look nice. And, looks don't always matter, but you know what? I like good looking engines. It's got nice runners in there. I might clean some of that up. Not 100% sure yet. It does have the heat crossover in there. Ports look nice. This thing has not been worked on at all. But like I said, there's the part numbers. 701R-36, 300-36. Like I said, that comes up as 2 other small block Chevy intake manifolds. But yeah, if you guys can help me, I need your help. Till the next one, see ya.